Welcome to Sacred Stories Podcast, a place to explore and discuss new and exciting books of consciousness. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello, and speaking with authors that have shared their wisdom and stories through their books is one of my favorite things to do. Today we are speaking with Eileen Bild, a contributing author for our new book, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change. Eileen is CEO of Ordinary to Extraordinary Life, Core Thinking. She holds a master's degree in transpersonal psychology, is a certified life coach, an executive producer for OTEL Productions, and a columnist for BIZCATALYST 360. So welcome, Eileen Bild, to Sacred Stories.
Thank you.
So thank you for being a contributing author for our new book, Chaos to Clarity, and sharing your story of your journey with fibromyalgia.
You're welcome. Yes, thank you.
Well, I think it's a really important story to share because I believe that many people today are suffering with chronic diseases like fibromyalgia, and I know that they can maybe draw some inspiration and possibly some hope from the sharing of your story.
Absolutely. It is definitely a challenge for a lot of people. And for me, my story started with these symptoms that my doctors were having a hard time pinpointing. And at the time that I started suffering from these symptoms, fibromyalgia was not a household name. It was 20 years ago. And I finally ended up with a female doctor who had started reading about fibromyalgia. And she said, well, you know what, I think this is what you have. And so she started treating me with prescriptions, and my symptoms didn't really get any better. In fact, they got worse. And over about a 7-year period, I ended up with literally a basket full of prescription pills and really just totally despondent. And I had pain all over my body. I had insomnia and brain fog and chronic fatigue. And it wasn't until my son said to me one day, Mom, why don't you smile anymore? That I had this light bulb go off. And I realized I needed to make a change. I had to do something. I did not want to go on living the way I was living. And I made a declaration.
And what was your declaration?
My declaration was basically either I was going to heal or I was done. And I kind of shook my hand at the universe, to the sky, and I kind of left it at that. And a whole new world opened up very shortly after.
Well, I have to say, you must have been at your wit's end, because to have pain all over your body, chronic fatigue, and insomnia at the same time, it must have been almost too much to bear.
You know, it was. And I like to say that I was kind of going down into, falling into an abyss. It was like I was stuck in this place that I could see the light. I could see that there was someplace else I could be, but I didn't know how to get there. And I didn't know what I could do other than what the doctors were telling me. And my life force energy, my sense of self, my whole way of being was totally diminished and shattered. And so I decided I had to rewrite that story. And I had to live it out differently, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and with intent. So my will that engaged when I made that declaration is what made that shift and that change from chaos to clarity.
So are you suffering from fibromyalgia today, or are you better?
Absolutely not. In fact, it's pretty remarkable what happened, because the main focus that occurred after things started to come into my life that was part of my healing was my thinking. I used to attach myself to, I have fibromyalgia, I have this pain, I have this going on and that. And it was this constant thought of being embedded in that condition and that disease. And when I realized I was kind of creating that paradigm by attaching to it, I needed to pull back and change how I was viewing it, my perception, how I was reacting and responding to all the symptoms. And I just totally created a a program for myself that included massage, acupuncture, life coaching, exercise, organic eating. I mean, I just took every aspect of my life and turned it upside down into a healing paradigm. And within 3 months, my symptoms all disappeared.
How long ago was that?
That was 15 years ago.
And are you still symptom-free?
Absolutely.
It's really, it's really a remarkable story. The way that you were able to heal yourself, especially from a disease like fibromyalgia, which is chronic and at that time was not easily diagnosed.
Correct. And I think it was, again, my son, I had 3 kids at the time, and they were my life. And I knew it took me every ounce to roll out of bed every morning to take care of my family. And it wasn't me. It was like something else was controlling my life. And I needed to get control back. I needed to be living a disease-free existence. And I like to say that there's only 2 ways we can exist. It's either going to be health and healing, or it's going to be sickness and disease. There is no in between. And we can't be in sickness and disease and be happy. I pretended and I tried, but I couldn't fool my son, couldn't fool my kids. So I decided, all right, I need to be living in an existence of health and healing. And that was the beginning of who I have become and all the things that I've accomplished up to today and the things that I continue to do.
So Eileen, what would be something, or what is one of the main things you would tell people who maybe are in sickness and disease now and would like to, obviously move to health and healing? What would be a first step for them?
The first step is to accept that you are where you are. And then after the acceptance, it's to identify for yourself what needs to be done in order to move beyond the idea of what you're suffering from. So I did a lot of affirmations. And instead of saying I have fibromyalgia, I repeated consistently every day, I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm healed, I am what I want to be. And I did not, anytime fibromyalgia came to mind in any way, shape, or form, I quickly replaced it to eventually where it did not come into my consciousness. And I avoided anything that was associated with it. And instead, I dove headfirst into whatever I needed to do, think, say, respond to that had to do with feeling good, being healthy, being vibrant. And I have a friend that reminds me from time to time that when I was in the middle of my fibromyalgia, she said I looked 100 years old. And as I was going through my healing process to the point that all the symptoms disappeared, and then I continued to nurture all the aspects, the mind, the body, the spirit, and the soul, she said, it's like I was glowing and other people saw it as well.
And this has turned into part of your work, correct? This journey to healing and health?
Correct, in a interesting way. So I ended up getting a master's in transpersonal psychology, And that allowed me to study the mind-body connection and the spirit, which is how we feel about ourselves, our connection to ourself, to the world around us. And as the years passed and I used my knowledge from my master's and I continued to delve myself into further self-development and professional development, I realized that at the core, we have a blueprint. And this blueprint is stepping into our authenticity. So when I look back on why, if someone suffers from a chronic condition, we often ask ourselves, why me? Why am I suffering from this? You know, what's the reason? And when I continue to go back to look at the why, over the years I've discovered I wasn't very self-empowered. And there were a lot of things in my life that I enabled without realizing it to squash who I was and who I am authentically. So I didn't have boundaries. I was a yes person. I was like a doormat, you know, the saying, we're a doormat. I gave and I gave and I gave, and I never replenished. So systematically over the years, probably from my teenage years till I was in my mid-30s when the fibromyalgia came on, I was breaking down internally on all the different levels, the mind, the body, and the spirit, to where my body was like, okay, you need to change. And I accepted that I needed a change and recognized it. And so, so I've taken that knowledge and I've built a platform of core thinking, because it all goes back to the core. Who am I? How am I in my relationship, in personal relationships, in business relationships? How do I respond to things? How do I take things in? And I could talk for hours about all that, but that's my basis.
I think that the sharing of your story in our book, Chaos to Clarity, is going to help so many people, because whether it's fibromyalgia or another chronic physical disease, or would you even say mental or emotional upset or disease that they're dealing with, that your story is one of hope, and then it shows people that there is a way out.
Absolutely, and that's what I hope. Like you said, hope that what I share, and that if I can do what I've done, anybody can do it. And it's just a matter of stepping into the process and the dedication. I dedicated myself to getting my life back. And that was my focus. And I wasn't going to stop until I achieved it. And I think in today's environment, stress is huge. And stress leads to dis-ease, which leads to chronic conditions. So my gift that I can give people with the work I do is to help them to lead a fulfilling life, and to live and lead and be a role model themselves, whether it's for their family or if they're a leader, a manager, a CEO, an executive, a business owner. It doesn't matter where you are in life, but to be an example of we can be in this world and still live it in a fulfilling way and be authentic.
I agree. And I thank you for sharing your story in the book. I thank you for sharing your story today with us. Eileen Bild, tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and the work that you do.
Yes, I can be found on my website, www.eileenbild.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. And as you said in the beginning, I'm a contributing writer. I'm my own column, Core Thinking, on BIZCATALYST360.com.
Perfect. And that's Eileen Bild, EILEENBILD.com. So thank you, Eileen, for being my guest. And again, a contributing author in our new book, Chaos to Clarity, Sacred Stories of Transformational Change, which is available through Amazon, booksellers worldwide, or direct from Sacred Stories Publishing. And thank you to our audience for listening to the Sacred Stories podcast. I am your host, Reverend Patricia Caginello. And until next time, as always, I encourage you to write your sacred story well.